He stood on the edge of the cliff, gazing down into the canyon floor where a sandstorm raged. The sun was setting, painting the sky a bloody orange color that was reflected in his rage-filled eyes. Below, in the narrow gorge, Randall, his former partner, sneered, holding an old Colt. His face was covered in dust and scars, and a crazy fire burned in his eyes. The howl of the wind in Eleanor's ears mixed with the rumble of falling rocks, but she knew it wasn't just the wind. It was his fury. She saw the ground beneath Randall's feet begin to crumble, and in her hands, the old diary that was meant to be the evidence trembled. Now it was their only chance. But how did a routine investigation lead them to this deadly trap in the wild desert? And what was in that diary that made Randall willing to do anything? To find out how this story began, one must go back to the very beginning 3 months ago. The life of Eleanor Vance, a journalist for the New York Times, seemed mundane. Her next assignment appeared simple: to write an article about the major construction magnate Randall Mason. Everyone knew he was corrupt, but there was no evidence. It's not just corruption, her editor told her. There's something much more serious there. You need to dig deeper. Eleanor began her investigation. She sifted through tons of documents and conducted dozens of interviews, but everywhere she hit a wall. No one wanted to talk. It seemed everyone was afraid of Randall. She felt that there was something more behind this story, but she couldn't find the key to the mystery. One night, just as she was about to give up, she received an anonymous message. It wasn't on paper, but carved into a piece of wood that someone had tossed to her door. Seek out the secret meetings on the river under the pseudonym Ghost. Eleanor spent the night studying the hidden messages. In the end, she found the Ghost, who offered to meet with her. She agreed. The meeting place was unusual, an abandoned mine on the outskirts of town. When she arrived, a tall, stooped man with a harsh gaze that seemed to bore straight through her was waiting. He was dressed in a worn-out jacket and denim pants. This was Yep. "I know what you want," he said, his voice low and raspy. "And I know you don't understand who you're dealing with. You want to help me?" Eleanor asked. "I want you to do what no one else could. I want you to expose the truth." He handed her an old leather diary. "Everything you need is in there, but you have to be careful. Randall won't stop at anything to protect his secrets." Eleanor took the diary but didn't leave. She felt compassion for him. She saw in his eyes not a madman, but a man broken by something much deeper than a simple life of solitude. She couldn't just walk away. She wanted to help him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He looked at her with some hidden pain that flickered in his eyes for a moment. "Because I can't control myself. Otherwise, I will destroy him," he said. The words sounded not like a threat, but like a desperate warning. 2 weeks passed. Eleanor couldn't sleep. The diary Yep had given her lay on her table. On the outside, it was an ordinary, time-worn notebook. A hand-stitched binding of rough leather, pages of thin paper, some of them faded. She ran her fingers over the cover, and a shiver ran down her spine. There were no ordinary entries inside. Each page was covered with strange symbols and numbers, like ancient runes. Eleanor, a woman accustomed to a clear and logical world, felt as if she had found herself in a labyrinth with no exit. She realized that this wasn't just a diary, but an encrypted message that only one person was meant to understand her. Her thoughts constantly returned to Yep. She felt that beneath his rough exterior was a vulnerable soul in need of rescue. He was like an abandoned mine, dark and empty on the outside, but full of treasures on the inside. She couldn't just leave. One evening, just as she was about to flee from this story, she received another anonymous message. This time it was carved into a piece of wood that someone had tossed to her door. "Go to the secret meetings by the river. He's waiting for you." Eleanor realized it was Yep. She didn't know how he had found her, but she knew he was the only one who could help her decipher the diary. She gathered her things and went to the meeting. The meeting place was the same as the first time, an abandoned mine on the outskirts of town. When she arrived, Yep was waiting. He was dressed in the same worn-out outfit. He looked tired, but there was determination in his eyes. "I knew you'd be here," he said, his voice low and raspy. "I knew you wouldn't leave." "I can't leave," Eleanor replied. "I need to find out what's in this diary." He sighed. "The truth, it's not what you imagine it to be. The truth is pain. The truth is blood." But Eleanor was ready to listen. She didn't pressure him, but simply shared her thoughts, her vulnerability. And to her surprise, Yep began to listen. He told her about his past. He was a former agent who had worked undercover. His last assignment was to infiltrate Randall's organization, but he was exposed. He lost everything: his life, his family, his name. He lived like a ghost, hiding from Randall, but he couldn't forget what had happened. He wanted revenge. "I know I shouldn't do this," he said. "I can't control myself when I'm angry. Otherwise, I will destroy him, and that's not what's needed. He must face a trial. I just can't do it myself." Eleanor listened to him, and her inspiration grew with every word. She saw in him not a cursed man, but a person capable of great deeds if he learned to control himself. She offered him her help. "I can help you," she said. "We can find a way. You can use your knowledge to do good." He looked at her with disbelief. He didn't believe anyone could help him, but her words, her faith in him, were like a breath of fresh air. She was the only one who wasn't afraid of him. She saw in him not only a monster, but a man who deserved happiness. She began to notice how his power manifested in small things. He could follow people unnoticed, read their body language. He could vanish and reappear at any moment. His knowledge was incredible. He knew everything about the criminal underworld, about the people who controlled it. He was like a phantom, and she realized that he could use this power for good. She proposed a plan. She wanted to help him learn to control his emotions so that his knowledge would become his ally, not his enemy. He laughed at her at first, but then, seeing her sincerity, decided to give it a try. He began to trust her. Their relationship deepened. Something more than just a journalist and her hero emerged between them. It was an attraction based on deep respect and understanding. Eleanor saw in him not a rough man, but a strong and vulnerable man who needed her love. And Yep saw in her not just a city woman, but a woman who wasn't afraid of his past, who believed in him. They were like two sides of the same coin. She bright, open, full of hope, he dark, secretive, filled with pain. And together, they were stronger than they were alone. Eleanor and Yep embarked on a journey that was full of dangers. The diary, which was meant to be their guide, was for Eleanor only a set of symbols, but for Yep a map drawn in his mind. She saw in him not just a man, but a person who was a part of this land. His knowledge was incredible. He knew where to find water in the desert, how to avoid venomous snakes, how to read tracks on the ground. He was like a compass that always pointed in the right direction, but their path was full of obstacles. On the very first night, a pack of wild wolves attacked them. Eleanor was terrified, but Yep was calm. He drew his knife and stood in front of her, protecting her. He didn't want to use his power, but he knew he had no choice. He cried out, and the ground around them trembled. The wolves stopped, frightened by the sound, and ran away. Eleanor was in shock. She saw how his face distorted with rage, but she also saw how he restrained himself so as not to harm her. She realized that his power was not a curse, but a gift that he had to learn to use for good. She realized that he was not a monster, but a man who was fighting with himself. They continued their journey. Eleanor began to notice how Yep was changing. He became more open, more vulnerable. He started telling her about his life, his family, his past. She felt that he trusted her, and that was the greatest gift for her. She began to see in him not just a rough man, but a person who was ready to fight for his happiness. Their relationship deepened. Something more than just a journalist and her hero emerged between them. It was an attraction based on deep respect and understanding. Eleanor saw in him not a rough man, but a strong and vulnerable man who needed her love. And Yep saw in her not just a city woman, but a woman who wasn't afraid of his past, who believed in him. They were like two sides of the same coin. She bright, open, full of hope, he dark, secretive, filled with pain. And together, they were stronger than they were alone. But their idol was shattered unexpectedly. One night, as they sat by the fire, Eleanor heard Yep cry out loudly. She ran out of the tent and saw that Yep was lying on the ground, next to the body of their faithful dog. A note was next to him. "He's coming for you soon. He knows you're here." Yep raised his eyes to her, full of rage. She had never seen him like that. His face was distorted, and fire burned in his eyes. Eleanor felt fear. "He's here. I knew he would come," Yep croaked. "Who is he?" Eleanor asked, trying to calm him. "Randall. He's my former partner. He was my mentor. He's come for me," he replied. Eleanor realized that her article wasn't just an article. It was a trap that they had both fallen into. She felt anger. She couldn't believe that a man who had been his mentor could be so cruel. Now she knew that they had to escape, but it was already too late. The next day, Randall appeared at dawn. His approach was not a quiet one. His step was heavy and confident, and even from 100 paces away, Eleanor could make out his dark silhouette against the rising sun. His face was distorted by a grimace of hatred, and a crazy fire burned in his eyes. His appearance evoked disgust. I knew I'd find you, little brother, Randall said, his voice low and raspy. He stopped a few meters away from them, looking at Yep. You thought I wouldn't find you. You thought I wouldn't know about you. You took everything from me. You betrayed me. And now you want to take my destiny, my power, from me. Yep stood in front of Eleanor, protecting her. You don't understand, Randall. It's not a power. It's a curse, Yep said. I don't want it. I can't control it. You're lying. You're just afraid. Randall screamed, his voice full of rage. You were always weak, always afraid to use what was given to you. I, Randall Mason, was born to rule this world, and I won't let you take my destiny from me. Randall pulled out his pistol. Yep took a step forward. Go away, Randall. Otherwise, I won't be able to control myself. Randall fired. The bullet flew past Yep, hitting a tree. Yep stood still, not moving. He didn't want to use his knowledge, but Randall fired again. The bullet hit Jeb's shoulder. He cried out in pain but did not fall. He only clenched his fists, and the ground beneath his feet trembled. Yep, no. Eleanor screamed. Don't do it. You can't. But he wasn't listening. His eyes were burning with fury, and his body was shaking with rage. He was ready for a fight. Randall laughed, his laughter full of madness. He was so confident that he didn't notice the ground beneath his feet beginning to sink. He was ready for a fight, but he wasn't ready for the fact that Yep wasn't alone. Eleanor, trembling with fear, ran to Yep and helped him stand. She knew they had no chance, but she also knew she couldn't just leave. She had to help him. Randall fired again, but this time Yep dodged. He was wounded, but he was not defeated. He turned to Randall, his eyes burning with fire. You wanted a fight, Randall. You'll get one.